There are countries that hold within themselves the essence of an entire continent. Portugal is one of them. Between endless seas and golden hills, this small land preserves landscapes that feel boundless. Here, the Atlantic light blends with the salty scent of the wind. The ancient stones of the cities tell stories carved by time, and the fields stretch like living poems beneath the sky. Portugal is not just a destination. It is an invitation to contemplation. It is the silence of monasteries, the echo of waves shaping cliffs, the sweetness of a wine that holds centuries of tradition. It is the meeting point where past and present coexist in rare harmony. Today, we will journey through 10 Portuguese wonders, not merely places, but experiences that unfold like chapters of a book with no end. Each stop will be a sensory dive, and each transition a promise that the next scene will hold an equally unforgettable beauty. Lisbon. Lisbon is not a city that can be explained in straight lines. It reveals itself in gentle curves, in hills that rise and fall like petrified waves, in streets that narrow as if guarding secrets, in viewpoints that suddenly open, offering horizons of sea and sky. It is a city born of light, and this light, they say, is unique in the world. Perhaps because the Tagus acts as an immense liquid mirror, multiplying the golden and bluish reflections that change with every hour of the day. Perhaps because the facades covered with tiles, with their geometric patterns and vivid colors, return to the sun a shimmering mosaic that becomes visual poetry. Walking through Lisbon, it is impossible not to feel your heart beating to a different rhythm. The sound of the yellow trams, gently creaking as they climb steep hills, blends with the murmur of conversations on cafe terraces, with the clinking of glasses toasting with Vinho Verde, with the calls of sardine vendors during popular festivals. The city breathes like a living organism, in which each neighborhood has its own soul. Alfama, with its labyrinthine alleys that preserve Moorish memories. Bairro Alto, where Bohemia translates into guitars of fado and gatherings that last until dawn. Belém, with its monuments that testify to the boldness of the navigators who once set sail to redraw the map of the world. But Lisbon is not only made of ancient stones and preserved traditions. There is also a modernity that quietly seeps in. In contemporary museums that challenge forms, in renovated districts that turned forgotten docks into cultural spaces, in suspension bridges that link margins and symbolize possible futures. This coexistence between old and new is what makes the city so rare. It lives in the present without ever severing its roots. The Tagus, in turn, is more than a river. It is the artery that nourishes Lisbon, the stage where the sun lays down in fiery colors, the line that guides the eye to the horizon. To sit on its banks, watching boats slowly cross the waters, is to understand that the city is also made of silences. Silences that speak louder than words. The silence of the wind blowing through the arches of Terreiro do Passo. The silence that precedes the first chords of a Portuguese guitar. The contemplative silence of those who watch. From a Miradouro, the city turning into a sea of red rooftops. And then there are the flavors, because Lisbon is not only contemplated with the eyes, it is tasted. The unmistakable sweetness of a custard tart, fresh out of the oven. The salt left on your lips after grilled sardines eaten during street festivities. The soft bitterness of coffee drunk quickly at an old counter. These details come together to form the sensory experience of a city that seduces with both simplicity and intensity. Lisbon is also saudade transformed into a city. A saudade that is not sorrow, but a sweet melancholy, like the lingering note of a fado echoing in Alfama's alleys. It is the feeling that every stone, every window, every wrought iron balcony holds a memory, a story of encounters and farewells. This enveloping atmosphere is what makes many travelers leave. But never forget, because Lisbon is not only visited, it is lived. And as one moves away from the capital, the feeling is not of farewell, but of promise, like closing a chapter full of colors and opening another, equally unexpected. The journey continues, like the Tagus itself, flowing toward the ocean, suggesting that there is still much to discover. The next scene does not need to be announced. It insinuates itself like a tide advancing gently, preparing the heart for the beauty yet to come. Sintra. Sintra is a place that seems to have escaped from the pages of a fairy tale. Nestled among green-covered hills, wrapped in soft mists that dance at dawn, the village is a refuge where the real and the imaginary intertwine. Walking through its narrow cobbled streets feels like advancing through a dreamed setting. Each turn reveals a tower. Each climb leads to a hidden viewpoint. Each shadow holds stories that span centuries. The heart of Sintra beats in its palaces, each with such a striking personality that they seem like living characters. The Pina Palace, with its vibrant reds and yellows, rests at the top of the mountain like a jewel crowning the landscape. Its painted walls evoke the romantic boldness of the 19th century, a time when kings dreamed of turning architecture into poetry. Wandering through its corridors is to dive into architectural fantasies, where Gothic, Moorish, and Manueline styles meet as voices of the same choir. Just below, the National Palace of Sintra rises with its conical chimneys, white and imposing, like guardians of royal stories. Here, kings and queens forged alliances, celebrated banquets, lived intrigues and farewells. Its tiles narrate battles and myths, and its halls still echo with the distant sound of regal footsteps. In Sintra, time seems to have learned how to stay. But it is not only the palaces that define the village's magic. There is also the Quinta da Regalera, a labyrinth of esoteric symbols, gardens hiding caves and secret tunnels, and the famous initiatic well, where each step is an invitation to introspection. Descending its spiral staircase is more than an architectural experience. It is a plunge into mystery, as if the visitor were being led to another dimension. And if the gaze extends beyond the stones, Sintra reveals its green soul. Dense forests, where oaks and pines intertwine, cover slopes that seem to breathe. The humid air carries aromas of damp earth and fresh leaves, while birds sing unseen, composing a natural symphony that accompanies every step. On foggy days, the trees appear like ethereal shadows, creating a landscape that blends the sublime and the enigmatic. The experience of Sintra is not limited to sight. It is tasted, touched, and felt. The sweet flavor of traditional quejadas and traveseiros reveals a gastronomic heritage that caresses memory. The freshness of the mountain breeze brushes the face, like an ancient whisper. The silence of the gardens, broken only by the rustling of leaves, leads to a rare peace. And then there is the view. For in Sintra, everything seems to lead upwards. From terraces and towers, the horizon opens to the Atlantic, reminding us that this dreamlike village also belongs to the vast real world. The contrast between the serenity of the hills and the immensity of the sea creates a feeling of fullness, as if the landscape were breathing together with those who contemplate it. Leaving Sintra is like waking from a dream, but it is not an abrupt awakening. It is a gentle return, where memory continues to pulse like an echo within the mind. Each palace, each moss-covered stone, each winding curve of the mountain remains inscribed in the heart. And so, the journey continues. Because after experiencing Sintra, any next destination opens like a chapter that does not seek to compete, but to converse with the beauty left behind. Óbidos. Óbidos is a jewel guarded by walls that seem to embrace time. From afar, the village appears like an enchanted vision. Whitewashed houses dotted with colorful flowers, winding streets that snake toward the central square, and at the top, an imposing castle silently keeping watch. Approaching Óbidos feels like crossing a portal, a threshold where the present slows down and the past rises in every stone. The still intact walls invite you to walk them. To climb them is to tread a line between sky and earth. On one side, terracotta rooftops stretch out like a reddish sea. On the other, green fields and vineyards shift their colors with the seasons. The breeze carries scents of orange blossoms and lavender, mingled with the distant sound of bells marking the hours. At the village's heart, the narrow streets are an invitation to contemplation. Blue and yellow doors contrast with whitewashed walls. Wrought iron balconies display red geraniums that ignite the facades. Small shops offer handicrafts, antique books, convent sweets, and above all, ginginha, cherry liqueur served in tiny chocolate cups that melt on the tongue and in memory. The castle, built in the 12th century, holds echoes of battles, vows of loyalty, and royal feasts. Today, transformed into a pausada, it opens its doors so travelers may sleep under ceilings that once heard medieval songs. Walking its corridors feels like sharing space with invisible knights and maidens. But Óbidos is not just a relic. It is a living stage. Throughout the year, it becomes the backdrop for festivals. The medieval fair, with tournaments, parades, and banquets as if time had stopped. The literary festival, where streets echo with the voices of writers from around the world. And the chocolate festival, when sweet aromas fill the alleys. On these days, Óbidos transforms into a stage of imagination where past and present celebrate together. Yet its deepest magic appears at dusk, as golden light spills over the walls and sets the facades aflame. Silence descends upon the streets, broken only by birds returning to their nests. In this moment, Óbidos reveals its soul, not just as a historic relic, but as a place of rare stillness, where time itself seems to rest. Leaving Óbidos is like closing an ancient book, its pages imprinted with images and sensations, the memory of its walls, of flowers spilling from windows, of the sweetness of ginginha, remains like a lingering echo. And the road that continues beyond Óbidos is not a farewell, but a continuation, carrying still the fragrance of its story. Porto. Porto is a city born from the meeting of stone and water. Its steep streets descend toward the Douro as if seeking the river's embrace, while bridges stretch like arms of iron and elegance, uniting banks that hold centuries of stories. Porto is not to be contemplated all at once. It is discovered in layers, like a wine that reveals new aromas with each sip. In Ribeira, the city's beating heart, the colorful houses rise in narrow facades, aligned like notes of an ancient score. Life overflows, neighbors greeting each other, music echoing from taverns, the clinking of glasses celebrating the end of the day. Sitting at a riverside cafe, watching Rabelow boats glide along the water, one feels that time flows to a different rhythm here. Port wine, the liquid jewel of the region, is more than a drink. It is cultural heritage. In the cellars of Vila Nova de Gaia, across the Douro, giant barrels guard centuries of tradition. The air is thick with sweet aromas, and each sip carries the memory of the Douro's terraced vineyards, etched like embroidery across the mountains. To visit the cellars is to take part in a ritual. Tasting the wine is tasting the city's very soul. But Porto is not only tradition. Its modern side emerges in the bold lines of the Casa da Música, in the contemporary forms of the Serralves Foundation, in literary cafes that once welcomed writers and continue to inspire travelers. This fusion of old and new gives Porto its unique identity, a city that honors its roots while looking toward the future. And then there are the details that define its character. The deep blue azulejos telling stories on the walls of São Bento Station, the Bolhão Market, where voices and aromas form a colorful symphony, the towering Clérigos Church, rising like an urban lighthouse. Every corner of Porto is a fragment of narrative, a verse in a poem best read on foot. At sunset, when golden light floods the river and the bridges shine like metal sculptures, Porto becomes pure contemplation. The reflection of colorful houses in the water creates a magical mirror, as if the city itself were floating. In that moment, one understands that Porto is not only seen, it is felt, breathed, lived. And when it is time to leave, there is no final farewell. Porto leaves behind the sweet, intense flavor of its wine, the murmur of the Douro's waters, the memory of stones warmed by the sun. It is as if each recollection were a sip stored in the soul, ready to be savored again. The journey continues, but Porto remains, like a song never forgotten. Coimbra. Coimbra is a city where time seems to pause and study before passing. On its steep streets, the echo of youthful footsteps blends with the murmur of centuries of history, creating a melody that exists nowhere else. Resting on the banks of the Mondego River, Coimbra carries both the lightness of a university town and the weight of having once been the capital of kings and queens. It is a place where every stone speaks, every tower watches, and every voice sings something greater than itself. At the city's heart stands the University of Coimbra, one of the oldest in Europe, founded in the 13th century. Its goat tower, rising over the skyline, is more than an architectural landmark. It is the clock of student life. The toll of its bells marks not only hours, but chapters of stories lived by generations. Entering the Passo das Escalas feels like crossing portals of time. On one side, the Joanina Library, with gilded wooden shelves and rare books holding centuries of secrets. On the other, the Chapel of St. Michael, where a Baroque organ resounds as if its music were from another dimension. But Coimbra is not limited to stones of knowledge. It breathes youth. Students in black capes cross the streets like characters in a living epic. Their traditions, such as the Queima das Fitas, paint the city with colors and songs, turning alleys and squares into stages of celebration. It is a rite of passage, a living theater where each student writes his or her own farewell and own saudade. The Fado of Coimbra, unlike that of Lisbon, is whispered like a prayer, sung almost always by male voices to the sound of the Portuguese guitar. It is more contained, more intimate, speaking of love, of loss, of silence between notes. Coimbra's fado is the invisible thread linking the stones of the university to the banks of the Mondego, a sound bridge between past and present. To hear it on a cool evening, in hidden courtyards or serenades under the moonlight, is to feel the city's heart beating in the rhythm of eternity. Coimbra is also a city of delicate contrasts. On one side, the narrow streets of the Alta, where old houses lean against each other. On the other, the Baixa, with shops, historic cafes, and squares where life pulses more quickly. The wide, calm Mondego balances these dualities, reflecting in its waters both youthful haste and silent wisdom. And then there are details that remain. The smell of old books in libraries, the sweet taste of Santa Clara pastries, the fresh breeze rising from the riverbank to the cloisters of the university. Every sensation in Coimbra seems to carry a memory, as if the city were built not of matter, but of recollections. At sunset, when golden light covers the towers and the Mondego turns into liquid silver, Coimbra reveals its most contemplative face. It is as if the whole city paused to hear the gentle song of Portuguese guitars. In that moment, there is no hurry, no wait, only the certainty that knowledge and beauty can walk side by side. And upon leaving Coimbra, one does not take only an image. One takes a melody of fado, of student laughter, of echoing bells. Coimbra remains within the traveler like a lesson never forgotten. For it is not merely a city to visit, but to feel and to learn. Douro. The Douro is more than a river. It is a liquid poem winding between mountains, drawing on the map of Portugal one of the most sublime landscapes in the world. Seen from above, the valley looks like a vast green and golden tapestry, where terraced vineyards align in precise curves, as if crafted by the hands of artisans over centuries. It is a territory where nature and human labor intertwine, creating a beauty not only contemplated, but felt in body and soul. Along its banks, small white villages rest like forgotten jewels, reflected in the calm waters of the river. Boats glide slowly, carrying visitors who discover at each bend a new horizon. The silence of the valley is deep, but never empty. It is filled with bird song, the rustle of vine leaves, and the constant murmur of the current flowing toward the Atlantic. The Douro is also the land of the wine that bears its name worldwide. The hand-carved terraces, classified as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, testify to centuries of dedication. Every autumn, harvest transforms the valley into celebration. Entire families gather grapes, while songs and laughter echo along the slopes. In traditional wine presses, feet crush the grapes, in an ancestral dance mixing effort, festivity, and communion. From this simple gesture is born the wine that crosses oceans and becomes a symbol of Portugal. Visiting the Douro also means diving into its flavors. Port wine, with its intense sweetness and notes of dried fruits, matures in barrels that hold time as a secret. Douro wine, robust and complex, carries in its essence the strength of the soil and the warmth of the sun. Alongside them, local gastronomy, roasted kid, aged cheeses, golden olive oil, each dish accompanied by the landscape as if it were part of the feast. But the Douro is not only wine and tradition. It is also pure contemplation. At dawn, mist covers the river like a delicate veil, slowly revealing slopes and villages. At sunset, the sky turns orange and purple, mirrored in the waters as if the river were a magical mirror. At times, the landscape seems suspended in time, and the traveler feels as though they have stepped into a living painting, each detail brushed by the hand of eternity. The viewpoints crowning the hills offer vistas that seem infinite. From São Leonardo de Galafura, the river stretches in soft curves, embracing mountains. From Casal de Loivos, the valley view is so vast, it seems to swallow the horizon. In each of these places, the heart slows, and silence takes the shape of prayer. Leaving the Douro is carrying away more than images. It is taking with you the scent of vineyards, the taste of shared wine, the memory of a river that never stops flowing. The journey continues, but the Douro remains within those who experienced it, like a sweet echo that never fades. Évora. Évora is a place where time does not hide. It walks slowly, leaving visible marks on every stone, on every shadow cast by ancient walls. Set in the heart of the Alentejo, Évora is a museum city, recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but it goes beyond preservation. It is a living city where past and present converse in delicate harmony. Crossing the arch of Porta de Aves, visitors step into a setting suspended between centuries. Narrow cobbled streets curve gently, leading sometimes to bright squares, sometimes to silent corners. Whitewashed houses, framed with yellow and blue around windows and doors, reflect the strong Alentejo light, creating contrasts that seem painted by impressionist hands. The Roman temple, known as the Temple of Diana, stands as testimony to the passage of empires. Its Corinthian columns, worn by time, still retain serene majesty. Standing before them, one understands that history is not only narrative, but presence. It breathes, it watches, it remains. Not far away, Évora's cathedral rises as a fortress of faith. Built between the 12th and 13th centuries, it unites the weight of Romanesque style with the lightness of Gothic. Climbing its terrace reveals a view stretching endlessly. Alentejo rooftops, golden fields, horizons without end. There, the wind blows like an ancient prayer, and silence becomes contemplation. The Chapel of Bones, on the other hand, reveals another face of the city, reflection on life's transience. Its walls, covered in human bones arranged in meticulous patterns, whisper a clear message. We bones that are here await yours. Far from morbid, the chapel invites humility and awareness of mortality, reminding that time belongs to all. Yet Évora is not only about solemn history. It lives in markets, taverns, and cafes. In Giraldo Square, the city's vibrant center, the music of fountains mingles with the murmur of conversations and laughter. Travelers and locals share the same ground, with glasses of Alentejo wine and dishes that carry the flavors of the land. Garlic assorda, lamb stew, cheeses, and cured meats that perfume the table. At sunset, the city dresses in gold. The walls glow with the setting sun, and long shadows turn ordinary streets into dreamlike scenes. The rhythm slows, as if the city itself sighed after a long day. Wandering at that hour reveals an intimate, almost secret Évora, where silence is company and beauty is revelation. Leaving Évora is to carry a mosaic of memories. The coolness of shaded stones, the gentle weight of Roman columns, the taste of wine, the echo of the Chapel of Bones. Évora remains as a lesson that history is not only kept in books, but in streets, in flavors, in whispered songs at nightfall. Fátima. Fátima is not just a place. It is a spiritual experience that transcends borders and beliefs. Situated in the heart of Portugal, this small town has become one of the world's greatest centers of pilgrimage, attracting millions of faithful who arrive seeking faith, comfort, answers, or simply inner silence. It is a space where spirituality manifests in every gesture, in every lit candle, in every step taken with devotion. The story of Fátima begins in 1917, when 3 shepherd children, Lucia, Jacinta, and Francisco, claimed to have seen apparitions of the Virgin Mary at Cova da Iria. Since then, the site has become a universal symbol of hope and faith. The sanctuary of Fátima, built around that memory, is today a vast sacred complex where monumental architecture blends with the simplicity of devotional acts. The Basilica of Our Lady of the Rosary, with its tall, imposing tower, is the heart of the sanctuary. Inside rest the tombs of the 3 little shepherds, reminding visitors that faith often springs from innocence and purity. Opposite stands the more modern Basilica of the Holy Trinity, capable of welcoming vast crowds in liturgical celebrations. Between the two, the wide esplanade serves as stage for gatherings and collective prayers, where silence can be more eloquent than any word. One of Fátima's most striking images is the candlelight procession, held every pilgrimage night. Thousands of small flames illuminate the darkness, turning the square into a shimmering sea of light and hope. The sound of hymns, the rhythm of prayers, the glow of candles moving like a luminous river create a spectacle that transcends religion. And touches the very essence of humanity. But Fátima is not only a sanctuary, it is also a path. Many pilgrims arrive on foot, coming from different regions of Portugal, crossing roads and fields in long journeys. Each step, each pain felt in the body, is offered as a silent prayer. Watching them kneel upon reaching the chapel of the apparitions is to witness the strength of a faith expressed in concrete gestures. The experience of Fátima goes beyond religion. For believers, it is a meeting with the sacred. For seekers, it is a space of reflection and silence. For all, it is a lesson in humanity. The air seems lighter, time slower, as if the land itself breathed in rhythm with the prayers. At sunset, when the sky turns golden and the basilica tower glows against the soft light, Fátima reveals its deepest essence, to be a spiritual beacon that illuminates not only the faithful's path, but also that of those searching for meaning. Leaving Fátima, is to carry away more than images or souvenirs. It is to take with you a spark of light, a silent peace that remains even when the world outside resumes its hurried pace. Fátima teaches that faith, whatever form it takes, can also be a path of hope. Madeira. Madeira is an island seemingly designed to inspire awe. Rising from the Atlantic like a garden suspended over the sea, it combines the grandeur of volcanic mountains with the delicacy of tropical flowers blooming all year round. Known as the floating garden of the Atlantic, the island is at once refuge, adventure, landscape, and poem. Funchal, the capital, unfolds like an amphitheater facing the sea. White houses scattered along the slopes look like stars resting on the hillsides. The cobbled streets echo with the footsteps of travelers and locals, while the Mercado dos Lavradores bursts with colors and aromas. Passion fruits of every variety, sweet bananas, silverfish glistening like living mirrors. Funchal is the gateway, but Madeira's soul lies in its mountains and trails. The Levadas, centuries-old irrigation channels, have become magical walking paths. To follow them is to wander through laurel forests, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, where vegetation is so dense that light filters in soft beams. The air is fresh, scented with moss and wet leaves. The sound of running water accompanies each step, a secret melody guiding the traveler through hidden valleys and shimmering waterfalls. Above, Pico Ruivo and Pico do Areeiro rise beyond the clouds. Climbing them means crossing into a realm of silence and grandeur. At sunrise, the sun paints the sea of clouds in shades of gold and purple, and for a moment, the traveler feels suspended between heaven and earth, in a space where time dissolves. It is an unforgettable experience, the very definition of contemplation. Madeira is also shaped by encounters with the ocean. The natural pools of Porto Moniz invite immersion in crystal-clear waters mingling with crashing waves. The cliffs of Cabo Girão, among the highest in Europe, offer dizzying views over the sea and terraced fields clinging impossibly to steep slopes. Every corner of the island reveals a new dialogue between land and ocean, always marked by the power of the Atlantic. And then there is the Madeira of flavors. Honey cake, beef skewers grilled on laurel sticks, black scabbardfish served with banana, Madeira wine aged by sun and sea, Each dish is a living memory of a tradition that reinvents itself without losing its roots. At dusk, the island softens into calm. The lights of Funchal ignite like constellations, mirrored in the quiet sea. The wind carries the perfume of night flowers, and silence is broken only by the eternal rhythm of the waves. In that moment, one grasps Madeira's essence, a place where man and nature do not compete, but coexist in poetic harmony. Leaving Madeira is like leaving a secret garden. One carries away the freshness of the levadas, the grandeur of the peaks, the taste of the wine, the memory of an infinite sea. The island lingers within the traveler as a promise that there are places in the world that are more than landscapes. They are experiences of the soul. Azores. The Azores are an archipelago born from the meeting of poetry and geology. Lost in the Atlantic, 9 islands rise like secret gardens, each holding landscapes that combine the power of volcanic fire, the freshness of waters, and the serenity of green fields stretching to the horizon. It is a place where Earth still breathes visibly, and the traveler can feel in every step the deep pulse of the planet. São Miguel, the largest island, is known as the Green Island. The Sete, Cidades lagoon is perhaps its most iconic image. Twin lakes, one blue and one green, united in the same volcanic crater. Gazing at these waters, one understands that nature can also paint metaphors. The union of contrasts, the harmony of opposites. In Furnas, the ground bubbles, releasing hot vapors reminding us that the earth here is still a living womb. The traditional stew, slowly cooked underground by geothermal heat, is a feast where flavor blends with the mystery of nature. Pico, with its cloud-topped mountain, is another emblem of the Azores. It is Portugal's highest point, and climbing to its summit is both a challenge and a revelation. From the top, one sees the endless ocean, other islands in the distance, and feels the vertigo of standing between heaven and sea. Pico is also a land of unique wines, grown in volcanic stone soils that seem improbable for life, yet yield nectar of intense character. The smaller islands, like Flores and Corvo, are fragments of untouched purity. Flores, covered in waterfalls and lakes, seems a garden fallen from the sky. Corvo, the smallest of all, holds within its heart an immense caldera, like a world's secret preserved in silence. On these islands, time takes a different measure, and the traveler discovers that the greatest luxury can be simply to contemplate without hurry. The Azores are also a place of encounters with the sea. Dolphins and whales choose these waters as a migratory route, and sailing to meet them is an experience of communion with wildlife. The ocean here is more than scenery. It is presence, companion, and promise of infinity. The Azorean towns, such as Angra do Heroísmo on Terceira, reveal the archipelago's historical dimension. Declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site, Angra was a strategic point of Atlantic routes and still preserves, in its streets and fortresses, the memory of encounters between continents. Walking there shows that the Azores are not only nature, but also living history. At sunset, the archipelago dresses in luminous melancholy. The sea glows orange and violet, and the islands appear to float like ships anchored in eternity. Silence is profound, broken only by seabirds' cries and the distant rhythm of waves. In those moments, the Azores revealed their essence, a mystical refuge where nature shows its purest face and humanity rediscovers humility before the vast. Leaving the Azores is to carry away a sense of eternity. The lagoons, the volcanoes, the flowers, the endless sea, all remain engraved in memory, like a poem that never fades. The Azores are more than a destination. They are a calling. A reminder that there are still places where Earth speaks in its own voice, and the human heart learns to listen. Portugal is more than a country on the map. It is a tapestry of landscapes, memories and emotions woven together. As one walks through its cities, villages, and islands, the traveler discovers that its true wealth lies not only in monuments, but in the way each place holds a soul of its own. Lisbon, Sintra, Óbidos, Porto, Coimbra, Évora, Fátima, Madeira, and the Azores are not merely destinations. They are chapters of a living book, written in stone, sea, wine, and silence. The journey reveals contrasts united in harmony. Medieval walls coexist with modern skylines, majestic churches with lively markets, the untamed ocean with narrow streets echoing ancient voices. In each encounter, Portugal offers not only beauty, but also a sense of belonging, as if every traveler, upon setting foot here, rediscovered something already within themselves. Yet perhaps the greatest charm lies in the gentle rhythm Portugal inspires. It is not a hurried destination, but an invitation to contemplation. With every sunset over the Douro, every breeze brushing the cliffs, every bell ringing in a sleepy village, time slows down and the heart learns to listen. The journey becomes a silent dialogue between the human soul and the poetry of the landscape. And when the moment of farewell arrives, one realizes there is no true departure. Portugal remains in the eyes that learn to contemplate, in the palate that carries its flavors, in the ears that still recall the melodies of fado or the murmur of waves. Each memory is a seed, ready to bloom again. Thus, the journey does not end. It becomes a promise. Portugal continues to call, like a lighthouse shining over the Atlantic, reminding us that the world is vast, but some places condense within themselves the very essence of beauty and eternity.